Dystopia warning, obviously. Today was budget day, and the only reason that I'm including a dystopia warning is because I will be talking about Tories in a little while. Heads up, they've got worse. No, really. I mean, wow. This is kind of an alternative take on the budget. If you're expecting seriousness, hard figures, and for Labour to be ripped to shreds for helping poor people, then go watch Sky News or the BBC or basically any outlet. At the moment, I'm being powered by coffee, but only because I'm not a Tory and, the cost of living, so I can't afford GAC. Anyway, today was the first budget by Labour in 14 years and the first ever budget that was delivered by a female Chancellor. Big up, not gonna lie, considered doing girl power. But this was a pretty bold budget in most respects. It has been pretty well received by the public, people that I've talked to. Even cynical people that despise Labour and were calling them Tory light are admitting that this was a good budget. Thoughts and prayers with Owen Jones at this difficult moment. It was an overwhelmingly Labour budget. Fair, considered, measured. Essentially the first budget that I've watched in the last 14 years where I haven't prepared to bite on a wooden spoon as I get brutally shafted up the wrong un by a Conservative. Now, before I get into the nitty gritty of it, I want to spend a bit of time sending thoughts and prayers to the right-wing media, actually most of the media, who are focusing excessively not on the fact that, poorer people are being helped, the rich are being taxed. No, there's an extreme focus on whether or not Labour have broken manifesto pledges. Expect this to continue for, I don't know, a couple of months. As Labour is asked why? Why did you raise taxes by people completely unaffected by the barren wasteland that we've been left with by the former government? Lead up to this budget was extremely hostile, and they were laying into Rachel Reeves for essentially going against what the Speaker allows, which is briefing the budget to the media, giving little snippets out. But why do they do that? To not spook the markets. In this day and age, considering the madness that we had to deal with Truss, and the Tories essentially sniffing the remains of our economic prosperity off the arse cheeks of a Soho madam, I'd say it's pretty relevant to bring up the last 14 years because that's having a direct impact on the kind of budget that Labour can deliver. Despite that, I think they broadly smashed it. And that's not even me talking as someone that's just massively relieved that my vote for Labour was not a wasted one. It was an objectively fair budget. But you've got the BBC, right, and Sky News, with a panel comprised of Boris Johnson, his sister Rachel Johnson, and his dad, Stanley Johnson, and the reanimated corpse of Margaret Thatcher, because balance. Let's get into some of the good things that they did. A £22 billion investment in the NHS, the biggest real terms increase since 2010. A COVID corruption commissioner, which made all of the Tories' arses on the opposite benches tighten. Private school VAT exemption coming into force January 2025. Boom. And as much as they try to, no one feels sorry for the toffs. Give it up. Talking of which, non-dom status was removed. Again, broadly considered to be a good thing by anyone that's not massively rich. Although I do have to say it's caused ripples in the kink community. There are concerns it could mess with the broader dynamics. Importantly, an £11.8 billion commitment to people affected by the infected blood scandal and the Post Office Horizon scandal. It was revealed in the budget today that the Tories apologised but set no money aside whatsoever to help those people. No plan, which is absolutely scandalous in itself. We're going to get slightly cheaper pints, lads. Now, the one that I was looking out for was capital gains tax, which is going up. Increased from 10% to 18%, and the upper rate increased to 24%. Boom. Take that, poshos. There's a freeze on income tax and NI, and employers' NI will increase to 15% from 2025. There's also a minimum wage increase and small business support. There are a lot of good things in this budget. No more austerity. Importantly, they are investing in our public services, our rail infrastructure, resources for SEND children. Now, I do have a few criticisms. Broadly, most people think that the decision on fuel duty was a bad one. It's a bit silly, it could have raised billions, and it did feel a little bit like pandering to Murdoch, which we don't like, and it's pointless because Murdoch does not give a f***. He'll hate any Labour government anyway. Mostly because they are hitting the most rich people the hardest. And that's why most of the media are attacking them no matter what they do. I also feel like they chickened out on inheritance tax, despite this only affecting the most rich people, especially considering the implementation of the winter fuel allowance, of which the threshold is way too low. I don't agree that that benefit should be universal, but only if the threshold is not low. And I also didn't really like the focus on benefit fraud when we've got things like, corporate fraud, tax evasion. Although in Rachel Reeves's defence, she did say that she'd focus predominantly on the gangs of people, not individuals, and the issue of tax evasion and corporate fraud was broadly covered under the mention of reforms to the HMRC and non-dom removal, etc. So how do you know that this was a good budget? Because tiny little Rishi Sunak got furious, didn't he? His last PMQs before he fades into obscurity, having completely shagged the country over a barrel. If you didn't watch it, just imagine, like a hobbit, kind of arm outstretched, lamenting the loss of his private jet. Another thing that Rachel Reeves decided to tax the rich on. The fact he has the barefaced cheek to even say anything is absolutely incredible. But to criticise a budget investing in public services, refusing to hit the poorest the hardest, refusing to give tax breaks to the richest, and restoring a country which them lot left to drown in a ditch for 14 years was another level. What's his gripe? What makes him really angry? Stopping tax dodgers, his poor private schools, having to cut back on the grouse and caviar. Cry harder, twats. Now, Labour had no choice but to increase taxes, but at least they're not directing that at the people that are struggling. And why did they do it? Because that lot tanked the economy and spaffed billions of public money up the wall. So he's going, but what comes next? What horrors await us? Oh yeah. Now we have the prospective leaders of the opposition peddling far-right conspiracies, floating the idea of, there's something they're not telling us, regarding a live, ongoing police investigation regarding the Southport attacker, equating all migration with terrorism, which could, in the worst possible outcome, see the attacker walk free and create more widespread disorder in Britain. One of them two morons is going to be the new leader of the opposition. They will say anything to further their agenda, and neither give a solitary toss about what they're doing to the country in the process. So we've got the Tories angry because they send their kids to private school kicking off. We've got the newspaper barons who hate the fact that they can't avoid tax and also send their kids to private school. All deeply upset with Rachel Reeves and the Labour budget. Why? Because this is the effect that it would have on household budgets. The poorest households gain the most, and the wealthiest pay the most. The Tory strategy of being reverse Robin Hoods is over. It's only through headlines like this, which most people in my political chat group thought was made up satire, and Talk TV inviting Liz Truss on to talk about the budget. She tanked the economy. This was the first time in 14 years that I felt calm watching a budget. There was no punishment. I do think they need to move on how they're treating people that are out of work. There is room for improvement in this government. But finally, after many, many years of looking like Edvard Munch's The Scream, it feels like a bit of sanity has been restored. It feels like we have grown-ups in power instead of, psychopathic, privately educated tossers.